The story begins with a man who never wanted power, fame, or anything loud. He only wanted peace. The people of Earth trusted him because he always stayed calm, even when others panicked. His name was Ambassador Leon Howe, and he had spent most of his life trying to stop conflicts before they turned into wars. Whenever two worlds argued, he was the one Earth sent. Whenever leaders raised their voices, he was the one who asked them to sit down again. He did not wear fancy clothes or act important. He walked like an ordinary person and spoke like one too. And because of that, even aliens who distrusted humans would listen to him. When the new tension with the Tsar Dominion began, people knew it was serious. The Dominion was large, powerful, and unpredictable. Their worlds were far from Earth, but their ships had crossed paths with human fleets many times. Some encounters were peaceful, some were not. Each year the pressure grew stronger, like a wire pulled tight. A single mistake could start something no one wanted. The only hope was a proper negotiation, and Earth needed someone the Dominion respected. That meant Leon had to go. He received the request on a quiet morning. He was in his office reviewing reports when the message came from the council. They told him the Dominion had finally agreed to a direct meeting. They wanted to discuss borders, trade, and travel routes. But everyone understood the truth. They wanted to test Earth's intentions. They wanted to see how far humanity could bend. And if they sensed weakness, they would use it. Leon listened to the council speak. He didn't interrupt. He didn't show fear. When they finished, he simply nodded. He knew he had to go, but he also knew the risk. The Dominion capital was not a friendly place. Their rules were strict. Their leaders were sharp and proud. One wrong sentence could be taken as an insult. One delay could spark suspicion. But Leon believed that even the most difficult people could be reached if spoken to honestly. He believed peace was always worth the danger. Before leaving, he visited the training compound where the small Earth delegation prepared. They were a mix of diplomats, analysts, and security officers. None were soldiers in the traditional sense. Their task was not to fight, but to survive long enough to talk. Leon spoke to each person, asked about their family, and reminded them that fear would not guide them on this mission. Calm minds win conversations, he always said. They listened, but in their eyes, he could see the truth. They were nervous. The day of departure was heavy with tension. In the orbital station, people watched him walk toward the shuttle. Some saluted. Some stood silently. Some whispered prayers. Humanity had sent ships across many stars, but this mission felt different. This one felt like a final chance to fix everything before something broke forever. Leon sat by the window as the shuttle detached from the station, drifting into the black. He watched Earth grow smaller, its blue glow fading into a distant circle. He whispered a simple promise to himself. He would do everything possible to protect his world, even if it cost him comfort, time, or safety. He had no idea how true that promise would become. The trip to Dominion space took several days. During that time, Leon tried to understand their mindset. Their culture was harsh but structured. Their leaders valued strength, order, and decisive action. They distrusted soft words and polite gestures. To them, respect was earned through courage, not kindness. Leon studied all this carefully. He knew he had to speak firmly without sounding aggressive, and confidently without sounding arrogant. It was a thin path to walk. When the shuttle crossed into Dominion-controlled space, the crew went silent. A massive station appeared ahead, larger than anything built by humans. Dark metal, sharp angles, and glowing patterns gave it a cold, intimidating look. The Dominion's architecture reflected their personalities, strong, strict, unwilling to compromise. Dominion ships swarmed around the shuttle, scanning it from every angle. The pilot waited nervously, gripping the controls. Leon sat still, breathing slowly. Finally, the station granted permission to dock. The shuttle landed inside a dim hangar filled with tall armored guards. Their eyes followed every movement. Leon stepped out first. He raised both hands slightly to show peace. The guards didn't move. They looked like statues, but their attention was sharp. A Dominion official approached, wearing a long dark robe and metal bands on their arms. The robes signaled rank. The metal bands signaled experience. The official's voice was cold, but formal as they welcomed the Earth delegation and instructed them to follow. The walk through the station felt endless. The corridors were narrow and dim, like a maze designed to unsettle visitors. The Dominion did not believe in comfort for guests. They believed in control. The delegation reached the negotiation chamber, a wide room with a circular table surrounded by high chairs. Every surface was made of metal, and the lights cast long shadows on the walls. It felt more like a courtroom than a meeting room. Dominion leaders entered one by one. Their expressions were unreadable. They sat across from the humans, each movement precise. The air felt heavier as the meeting began. Leon opened with a calm greeting. He thanked them for allowing the discussion and expressed Earth's wish to settle disputes without conflict. The Dominion leaders listened, but did not react. Their culture had no tradition of polite nods or soft smiles. Silence was their way of showing attention. The first hour passed without trouble. Both sides asked questions about border lines, travel rights, and shared routes. The Dominion leaders remained cold but controlled. Leon answered carefully, never raising his voice, never allowing frustration to seep in. His voice steady, his posture relaxed. He was doing exactly what humanity hoped, turning a dangerous meeting into a balanced conversation. But beneath the surface, something felt off. The Dominion representatives seemed distracted. They shared brief glances with each other. The guards around the room shifted positions more often than usual. Even Leon felt it, a strange tension creeping into the room like invisible smoke. During a short break, one of the human delegates whispered that something felt wrong. Leon agreed quietly, but he told them to stay focused. They were too close to stop now. If they showed fear, the Dominion would seize it as a sign of weakness. And if they pushed too hard, the Dominion might react aggressively. They had to walk the line perfectly. When the meeting resumed, one of the Dominion leaders raised a topic that had nothing to do with borders or trade. They asked about Earth's new defense fleet. They asked how many ships humanity had built in the last year. They asked why Earth had strengthened its outer colonies. These were not questions of peace. These were questions of suspicion, control, and hidden motives. Leon answered honestly. Earth was preparing for emergencies, not confrontation. But the Dominion leader's eyes narrowed, as if testing the truth. The air in the room grew sharper. Even the guards sensed it. Suddenly, the chamber doors locked with a heavy echo. The lights dimmed. The Dominion guards stepped closer. The human delegation froze. Leon knew instantly that something had gone terribly wrong. One Dominion leader stood up, their voice harsh. They accused Earth of manipulation, of expansion, of preparing for war. Leon tried to respond, but they cut him off. The accusation turned into hostility, and hostility into threat. The situation spiraled so fast, it felt unreal. The guards moved in, their weapons activating with a rising hum. The human delegation stepped back, instinctively grouping together. Leon raised his hands once more, trying to stop the escalation. He spoke calmly, even with danger closing in. He insisted that Earth wanted peace, that humanity had never planned an attack, that violence would destroy everything both sides had built. His voice was steady, but the guards did not care. The final moments were chaos. The guards surged forward. The delegation tried to retreat. Leon stepped in front of them, shielding the others with his body. He didn't think. He moved out of instinct, the same instinct that had guided his entire life. Protect before anything else. The sound that followed was sharp and final. The room froze. The Dominion leaders stared in shock. The Earth delegation, trembling, caught their breath. Leon lay still. In that moment, something more than a life was lost. A fragile hope collapsed in silence. And somewhere deep within the station, far from watching eyes, a new chain of events began, events that would reach across stars and change everything humanity thought it stood for. News of the ambassador's death reached Earth like a shockwave no one was ready for. It arrived first as a short, cold message sent by the Dominion. They called it an unfortunate incident, claiming their security had been forced to respond to a sudden threat during the meeting. The message had no warmth, no regret, no clarity. It felt like a distant announcement, the kind made by someone who didn't truly care what had happened. Most people on Earth didn't even understand the message at first. Many thought it was some kind of system error or mistranslation. For a few seconds, even the council members stared at the words in confusion, hoping someone would say it was a misunderstanding. But no correction came. No explanation followed. The message was real. The room where the council met fell into a deep silence. It was the kind of silence that didn't come from calmness, but from disbelief. These were people who handled crises, threats, and political storms every day, and even they didn't know what to say. The ambassador had been more than a diplomat. He had been the bridge between worlds, the calm that kept two powerful sides from falling into conflict. Within minutes, the news spread through official channels, then through private networks, then across every screen on Earth. People read the message again and again, hoping the words would change. But they didn't. Single quotes T. Soon the silence vanished, replaced by grief and rising anger. Crowds gathered outside public buildings. Some carried candles. Some stood with their heads down. Some stared at the sky as if expecting him to return. Others demanded answers, their voices rising with confusion and frustration. It wasn't only because a respected leader had died. It was the way he had died, far from home, in the very place he was trying to protect. No details. No apology. No explanation beyond a cold claim that it was a security issue. For ordinary people, it felt like an insult added to tragedy. Videos of the ambassador began circulating everywhere. Clips of him shaking hands with foreign leaders, comforting frightened children during a crisis, giving calm speeches when others panicked. People remembered how he spoke softly but confidently, how he always looked directly at the person he talked to, as if they mattered more than the tension around them. People who had never met him felt as if they had lost someone close, but grief was only the beginning. Inside Earth's intelligence network, another truth surfaced, one kept hidden from the public for only a short time. Analysts uncovered fragments of encrypted data showing that the security breach the Dominion mentioned was not a real attack. It had been staged. Signals taken from the meeting chamber showed no sign of weapons activated by humans, no sign of threats from Earth's delegation. Instead, the signs pointed only one way. The incident had been arranged from within the Dominion side. Earth's intelligence division reviewed the data again and again before sending it to the Council. They wanted to be absolutely certain, but the evidence didn't change. It only became clearer the ambassador had not died by accident. He had been targeted. When the Council saw the report, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. They felt anger, not wild anger, but the heavy kind that sits in the chest and refuses to leave. These were people who preferred peace, who had worked with the ambassador for years, who knew how hard he fought to prevent exactly this kind of tragedy. And now he was gone, and the Dominion wasn't even pretending to care. The council released a public statement confirming the ambassador's death, but didn't release the full intelligence report yet. They needed to prepare. They needed the world to be united before emotions grew out of control. But people sensed the truth anyway. Something was wrong. Something more than what the Dominion had claimed. And that silence from Dominion leadership only made everything worse. No sorrow, no cooperation. Not even a diplomatic regret. Just a cold message and a closed door. In the days that followed, Earth changed. For the first time in many years, all nations agreed on something instantly. It didn't matter their political arguments, their cultural differences, or their past conflicts. They were united in their grief, united in their anger, united in their desire to protect their world from whoever had taken the ambassador from them. Old rivalries were set aside. Governments that usually argued about the smallest things now spoke with one voice. People who normally disagreed on every issue suddenly stood side by side. Something about losing someone who spent his life trying to hold peace together made everyone feel responsible for him, and responsible for what came next. Earth's leaders held a private meeting that lasted hours. They knew that reacting too fast could lead to chaos, but reacting too slow could make Earth appear weak. And weakness was the last thing the Dominion understood. The Dominion respected strength, order, and direct action. They misread kindness as softness, patience as hesitation. The Council understood this, and they understood what the Dominion's silence meant. Earth demanded a full explanation. They sent official requests through diplomatic channels, through military channels, and even through neutral world mediators. Days passed. No answer returned. Not a single Dominion official attempted to contact. Earth. It was not simply disrespect, it was dismissal. The final attempt at peaceful communication came when Earth transmitted a direct message to the Dominion capital, requesting the release of all data, recordings, and reports of the incident. This time the Dominion did respond, but their reply was short and mocking. They said the matter was closed. They said Earth should accept responsibility for their own failures. They even accused Earth of sending an unstable representative. That final line was the breaking point. Earth didn't explode in anger. It didn't send threats. It didn't scream. Instead, it became still, dangerously still. A silence spread across government offices, military command centers, and intelligence rooms. The kind of silence that forms when a decision is being made not from emotion, but from certainty. The ambassador had been killed unjustly. The truth had been twisted. The Dominion had refused to cooperate. And now they were insulting the very person who had risked his life to keep peace alive. Inside the Unified Defense Command, officers began preparing emergency protocols. Old fleets that had been resting in orbit were powered on. Engineers returned to stations that had been closed for years. Factories that once built exploration ships now shifted to defense units. Not because Earth wanted to attack, because Earth needed to show it would not be pushed aside. Civilians watched all of this unfold through news streams. Instead of panicking, they surprised the world. They stepped forward to help. Volunteers filled supply centers. Colonies sent resources without being asked. People across Earth donated materials, energy, tools, anything they could to help strengthen the defense systems. It wasn't aggression. It was unity. People spoke the ambassador's name in meetings, in households, in public gatherings. He had spent his entire life trying to bring peace. And now his people were preparing to honor him not through revenge, but through justice and protection. Meanwhile, the surviving members of the Earth delegation who were with him arrived back home. They were shaken, pale, and quiet. They had witnessed what no one expected to see. They had seen how quickly peace could collapse. They had seen how the ambassador had stood between them and danger without a second thought. Their testimony was calm, but heartbreaking. They explained how the meeting had turned, how the Dominion guards had moved in without warning, how the ambassador had stepped forward to shield them. Their words confirmed what Earth already suspected. He had died trying to protect others. As he always had, Earth now knew the truth fully and clearly. The world mourned, but it did not fall apart. Instead, it grew stronger, more united than anyone had seen in generations. The image of the ambassador standing calmly in that final moment spread across screens everywhere. People said he had become a symbol, not just of loss, but of what humanity stood for. The council met again and prepared one final message for the Dominion. It was simple, direct, and firm. It asked for the individuals responsible to be turned over. It asked for cooperation in the investigation. It asked for respect toward the life that had been taken. But deep down, Earth no longer expected a reasonable answer, and soon, the Dominion proved that expectation correct. The reply was short, dismissive, and careless. They denied everything. They refused every request. They laughed at the message, as if Earth was a small world making noise it could not back up. That single moment sealed everything. Earth did not cry out in anger. It did not send insults. It did not break into chaos. It simply changed. Every leader felt it. Every nation understood it. Every person sensed it in their hearts. Humanity would not stay silent anymore. What the Dominion had done was not just an attack on a single man. It was an attack on the peace he had built. The respect he had earned, and the trust he represented. Earth had been patient. Earth had been reasonable. But now Earth was awake. And the stars were about to learn what that meant. The days after the Dominion's final rejection felt different from anything Earth had experienced before. People were no longer confused or shocked. They were focused. They were steady. They were determined in a way that didn't come from anger alone, but from a shared sense of responsibility. The ambassador had spent his life trying to hold peace together, and now his world was preparing to protect everything he believed in. Inside Earth's main command center, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. Screens filled the walls, showing maps of space routes, fleet positions, and communication lines. Officers worked quickly but carefully, checking every detail twice. No one yelled. No one panicked. It was the kind of quiet where everyone knows they are part of something larger than themselves. The leaders had already made their decision. If the Dominion refused honesty, refused cooperation, refused even a basic investigation, then Earth had to prepare for the worst. They could no longer pretend the threat wasn't real. The ambassador's death had shown the truth with painful clarity. The Dominion did not see Earth as an equal partner. They saw it as a world to pressure, intimidate, and bend. But Earth was not going to bend. The first major step was launching Operation Iron Resolve. It wasn't a secret attack or a reckless move. It was a defensive plan, something Earth had created long ago but never wanted to use. The operation focused on strengthening Earth's ability to protect itself and its colonies, making sure no other world could take advantage of the situation. Old ships that had been resting in dry docks were activated again. Some hadn't flown in decades. Engineers checked their engines, replaced their damaged panels, and upgraded their systems with newer technology. Shipyards that usually built exploration vessels suddenly filled with heavy equipment. Workers who had never expected to be part of a crisis worked side by side with veterans who remembered older conflicts. Everywhere, the same question echoed: what would the ambassador want us to do? Most people believed the same thing: he would want Earth to be strong enough to protect itself, not through cruelty, but through unity. That thought guided everyone. In one of the largest orbital shipyards, a group of young engineers worked around a huge carrier ship that had once been considered too old to be useful. Now it had become a symbol. People painted a small emblem near its bridge, a simple circle with a calm line through it. It was the ambassador's personal mark, the one he had signed on every peace treaty. They didn't add his face or anything dramatic. Just that symbol, a quiet reminder of who they were protecting. Civilians didn't wait for instructions. They formed long lines at volunteer centers. Some offered to help transport supplies. Others repaired machines, cleaned storage bays, or delivered meals to workers who spent long nights inside hangars. Even people from distant colonies sent shipments of metal, fuel, and building materials without being asked. For a brief moment, Earth felt more united than it had in generations. In the council hall, leaders reviewed updates from every region. Reports came in showing rapid progress. Satellites were repositioned. Communication lines were secured. Stations near the border were reinforced. Everything was being handled quickly but responsibly. A representative from the frontier colonies spoke during a meeting. They said they had lived closest to Dominion space for decades. They had seen Dominion ships pass by their worlds, sometimes peacefully, other times with suspicion. They knew the risk better than anyone, and they fully supported Earth's response. Their voice didn't tremble. They didn't speak with fear. They spoke with determination. And when they finished, every leader in the room nodded, knowing they were all thinking the same thing. Earth would not repeat the mistakes of the past. They would not wait quietly for another tragedy. Meanwhile, the surviving delegation members who had been with the ambassador were still recovering. They were placed in a secure facility so they could rest and share everything they remembered without pressure. They were careful with their words, still shaken by the memory of the meeting turning into chaos. They described how the ambassador had tried until the very last moment to calm the situation, how he had stepped forward to protect them, how the Dominion guards had moved without hesitation. Their testimony was recorded and stored securely, not to be used for revenge, but to make sure the truth was never twisted again. One of the delegates, a quiet man who rarely spoke in public, said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. He said the ambassador didn't move out of bravery or heroism. He moved because it was who he was. He always put others before himself. He didn't think about danger. He only thought about protecting the people behind him. That single sentence spread quickly through Earth's networks, repeated by millions of people. It made the ambassador feel more human, more real, more present than ever. In military training centers, new recruits arrived every day. Some were young adults who felt it was their duty. Others were older individuals with past experience. They trained hard, not fueled by hatred, but by a sense of purpose. Instructors reminded them again and again that Earth was preparing to defend, not destroy. Strength is not aggression, one instructor said. Strength is knowing you can protect what matters. Those words echoed across the training halls. Earth's fleet commanders reviewed plans for every possible situation. They didn't want a war. No one did. But they needed to be ready in case the Dominion tried to take advantage of Earth's grief. The commanders analyzed star routes, supply lines, and evacuation paths. They planned how to shield civilian ships and how to respond to emergencies. All plans were based on 3 principles: protect lives, avoid unnecessary harm, and never act without reason. One night, as the unified fleet gathered above Earth, people in cities all over the planet looked up at the sky. The ships glowed like tiny stars, their lights blinking softly in the dark. Families stood together on rooftops, pointing at the slowly moving lights. Some whispered that they hoped the ambassador could see the unity he had inspired. Others hoped his spirit was at peace. A mother holding her child said something simple but meaningful. We're not preparing for war. We're preparing to keep everyone safe. Those words spread just like the words from the delegate. It reminded people that this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about responsibility. Across the colonies, life changed as well. People on small frontier worlds, who often felt distant from Earth, now felt connected again. They gathered in community halls to send messages of support. Some even offered their own, small ships for transport or patrol duties. The ambassador had visited many of those worlds during his lifetime. People remembered how he listened more than he spoke, how he offered guidance without making promises he couldn't keep. They wanted to honor him by standing with Earth, not out of fear, but out of respect. Inside Earth's intelligence headquarters, analysts studied Dominion movements. They noticed something strange. The Dominion hadn't increased security near their borders. They hadn't reached out to allies. They hadn't even strengthened their supply routes. It confused the analysts at first. But soon, a theory formed. They believed the Dominion didn't take Earth seriously. They believed Earth would be too afraid, too divided, too weak to respond. That belief would soon prove to be the Dominion's biggest mistake. As Operation Iron Resolve continued, Earth prepared its final diplomatic message. It was calm, direct, and without threats. It demanded justice, demanded accountability, and demanded cooperation. But it also included something the Dominion had not expected. Evidence. Earth attached copies of the intelligence data, showing the incident had been planned internally. They didn't accuse the Dominion government directly. They simply showed the truth. They hoped, quietly, that someone in the Dominion leadership would finally act with reason. The message was sent. Then the world waited. Hours passed. Then a day. Then two. Finally, the Dominion responded, but not with regret or explanation. They sent a single sentence. The matter is closed. Nothing more. No details. No respect. No acknowledgement. No humanity. That reply reached every corner of Earth, and when people read it, something inside them finally settled. Not anger, not fear, but clarity. Earth understood now. The Dominion would not listen. They would not negotiate. They would not recognize the value of the life they had taken. And if Earth wanted peace in the future, they had to protect themselves in the present. The moment the message was received, the unified fleet commander gave a simple order: begin the final preparations. It wasn't a call for war. It was a call for readiness, a call for unity, a call for justice. Every person in every command center stood a little straighter. Every engineer worked a little faster. Every volunteer felt a little more determined. Humanity was no longer responding with words. Humanity was preparing to respond with strength. Calm strength. Controlled strength. The kind that rises not from hate, but from the memory of a man who believed peace was worth protecting. And soon, the stars would witness what that strength truly meant. When the final preparations were complete, a quiet calm spread across every command center, shipyard, and training hall. It wasn't the calm of peace. It was the calm of people who knew what they had to do and were ready to face it with steady hands. Earth wasn't seeking revenge. It wasn't trying to start something terrible. It was answering a truth that could no longer be ignored. The unified fleet gathered like a constellation above the planet rows of carriers, patrol ships, cruisers, and support craft. Their lights reflected off Earth's blue glow, forming patterns that people watched from rooftops and windows. Some whispered prayers. Some held their families close. Some simply stood still, staring at the sky and feeling a mix of fear, pride, and sadness. The ambassador's symbol, the small circle crossed by a calm line, had quietly appeared on every ship. No one ordered it. Workers, engineers, and pilots painted it themselves. It reminded everyone that they were not fighting out of anger. They were fighting to protect a future he had believed in. Inside the flagship, the main chamber was filled with screens showing fleet positions and star routes. Officers moved carefully, speaking in low voices. The fleet commander, an older man known for his steady judgment, stood in the center. He didn't give a fiery speech. He didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "Stay focused. Stay disciplined. Protect each other." And that was enough. When the launch order came, the fleet moved smoothly through space, leaving Earth behind like a glowing memory. The ships stretched out into long formations, engines lighting the darkness. Civilians watching from the planet felt a wave of emotion. For years, they had worried about the Dominion. For years, they had hoped peace would hold. Now they were watching their world stand up for itself. The fleet's first targets were not cities or civilian areas. Earth did not want to harm ordinary Dominion citizens. They aimed only for military outposts, places that had threatened trade routes or watched Earth's colonies with suspicion. The goal was to weaken the Dominion's ability to cause further damage and to show strength without cruelty. As the fleet arrived at the first Dominion outpost, the atmosphere inside the ships tightened. Even though Earth was acting in self-defense, the reality of conflict felt heavy. Pilots adjusted controls. Engineers checked systems again. Communication officers prepared channels. Every heartbeat seemed a little louder. Then the Dominion ships appeared. They were sharp, dark, and shaped like blades. Their designs reflected their culture, harsh, efficient, and intimidating. But to Earth's surprise, the Dominion didn't open communication. They didn't even ask questions. They simply moved into attack positions, confident that Earth would hesitate. Earth didn't hesitate. The fleet acted in perfect coordination. Shield units held strong in the front, protecting the carriers behind them. Patrol ships moved like a protective wall, making sure no Dominion craft slipped past. Earth's main vessels aimed at weapons platforms and command beacons, carefully avoiding anything that could cause unnecessary damage. The first exchange of fire lit up the darkness like flashes of lightning. The Dominion ships fought aggressively, pushing forward with confidence. But something unexpected happened. They were overwhelmed not by power alone, but by precision, teamwork, and unity. Earth didn't scatter. Earth didn't panic. Every movement was planned, every action synchronized, every ship trusting the others. Within minutes, the Dominion outpost lost its main defense systems. Officers inside their base shouted for reinforcements, but none arrived. They had believed Earth would come quietly, that Earth would break under pressure. They had believed wrong. A Dominion officer monitoring the battle stared at the screens in disbelief. He had never seen Earth act with such determination. He had always thought humans were too emotional, too divided, too soft. Now he watched their fleet move like a single heart beating with purpose. The outpost surrendered. Earth didn't celebrate. The crews didn't cheer or raise their voices. They secured the base, collected information, and confirmed there were no civilians inside. Everything was handled with professionalism and restraint. That was what made the victory powerful. It came from discipline, not anger. Word of the battle spread quickly across Dominion space. Some leaders laughed at first. They claimed the humans had been lucky. They promised their soldiers would crush the next attack. They insisted Earth didn't understand the strength of the Dominion. But deep inside the Dominion's communication halls, quiet fear began to grow. Reports of Earth's unity were difficult to ignore. Their speed, precision, and coordination were surprising. The Dominion had always believed humans were unpredictable and disorganized. But now they were organized better than anyone expected. As Earth's fleet moved deeper into contested space, they encountered 2 more Dominion bases. Both responded with threats. Both were prepared for a fight. But neither lasted long. Earth sources targeted weapons, engines, and communication arrays, never striking in ways that would cause unnecessary harm. They wanted the Dominion leadership to see the difference between justice and destruction. At the third base, Dominion soldiers surrendered before the first shot was fired. They had heard what happened at the earlier outposts. They had watched the broadcasts. They had seen the calm discipline Earth maintained during every mission. And something inside them realized the truth. Humans were not weak. They were not afraid. They were not lost without their ambassador. They were united because of him. Earth's fleet allowed the soldiers to leave peacefully. They took control of the outpost and sent a message that spread across the Dominion like a quiet warning. Earth would protect itself. But Earth did not seek to harm the innocent dot in the Dominion's capital. The leadership began to split internally. Some wanted to escalate the conflict, believing they could overpower Earth if they committed everything. But others argued that Earth's response had been controlled, reasonable, and clearly limited. They recognized that the assassination incident was spiraling into something dangerous. Some even admitted privately that they had not supported the killing of the ambassador. For the first time in years, divisions formed at the highest levels of the Dominion government. Meanwhile, Earth continued its advance carefully, cautiously, but firmly. Each success added to the Dominion's confusion. They had expected chaos, not calm strategy. They had expected fear, not unity. They had expected hesitation, not confidence. At one point, Earth intercepted a Dominion transmission meant for internal use. It said, "They are not acting like a fragile world. They are acting like a single force." That single sentence became famous among Earth crews. It reminded them that they weren't fighting alone. They were carrying the ambassador's memory with them, his courage, his patience, his belief that humanity could rise above division. During every mission, the emblem painted on the ships glowed softly under the lights. Pilots touched it before launch. Engineers wiped it gently when they performed repairs. Officers glanced at it during briefings. It kept the fleet grounded, reminding them to stay true to who they were. The most difficult moment came when Earth approached a heavily fortified Dominion command station. It was massive, larger than the previous bases combined. It controlled multiple sectors. It also served as a political hub for the more aggressive Dominion leaders. Earth expected strong resistance, but something strange happened. Before Earth gave the order to engage, the Dominion requested communication. The fleet commander approved it. The screen lit up, showing a stern-looking Dominion officer with sharp eyes. For a moment, neither side spoke. The silence was heavy. Finally, the Dominion officer said, "Why are you holding back?" The fleet commander didn't raise his voice. He simply answered, "We strike only where necessary. We do not harm those who are not responsible." The Dominion officer hesitated, clearly surprised. "You don't fight like others." "We fight to protect," the commander replied. "Not to destroy." The Dominion officer lowered his gaze. Something changed in his expression. A realization. A doubt. A crack in the belief he had been taught all his life. Then he ended the transmission. A few minutes later, the massive command station surrendered without a battle. When Earth's crews entered, they found signs of internal conflict arguments among the Dominion officers. Scattered documents, hurried evacuation markings. It was clear that not everyone inside agreed with the assassination. Some had resisted it from the start. Others were afraid of what their own leaders had done. Earth didn't punish them. They secured the station quietly, treated the officers with respect, and provided medical help where needed. As the fleet completed this mission, a message arrived from deep within Dominion leadership. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an insult. It wasn't even an excuse. It was a request for emergency negotiation. For the first time since the ambassador's death, the Dominion wanted to talk. Earth didn't relax. They didn't celebrate. They didn't trust the message immediately. But they knew one thing with certainty. Their response, steady, controlled, and guided by unity, had finally reached the Dominion's heart. And now, the future of two civilizations was about to shift in a way no one had expected. The days after the final attack were strangely quiet. Not the silence of fear, but the kind of silence that comes when people finally allow themselves to breathe again. The unified fleet had pulled back to a safe distance, watching from the edges of the Dominion's territory, waiting to see what would happen next. No one wanted to rush into another clash. Everyone was tired, both in body and heart. The people of Earth were still hurting from what had been done to their ambassador, and the people of the Dominion were shaken by what the extremists inside their own ranks had caused. The air across the stars felt heavy, as if all sides knew that the universe was waiting for someone to take the first step toward ending the crisis. In the middle of this tense calm, a message arrived. It was not from the Dominion's old leaders, the ones who had ordered the attack and pushed both civilizations into danger. This message came from a group of their moderate leaders, individuals who had stayed quiet during the rise of the extremist faction, but had finally stepped forward. Their message was simple and honest. They asked for talks. They admitted that the attack on the ambassador had been planned by a small group who wanted chaos. They said they were ready to hand over the people involved. When the message reached the unified council on Earth, the room fell silent. No one celebrated. No one sighed in relief. They simply listened. It took a long moment before anyone spoke. They knew this was a fragile moment, one that could easily collapse if anyone acted carelessly. After hours of calm discussion, the council agreed to respond. They said they were willing to talk, but only if the Dominion proved their sincerity with real actions. The first request was clear. The individuals responsible had to be surrendered immediately. To the surprise of many, the Dominion agreed. A few days later, a quiet transmission arrived, confirming that the responsible figures had been detained and prepared for transfer. The message was sent with no excuses, no attempts to shift blame, only a promise to cooperate fully. For the first time since the ambassador's loss, hope returned, not the loud hope that people shout with, but the soft kind that makes people sit up a little straighter and believe that maybe, just maybe, things can get better. Once this first requirement was met, Earth agreed to begin talks. The meeting place was chosen with great care, a neutral station floating between both territories. It was old, worn from decades of use, but it had a history of peacekeeping meetings. No weapons were allowed. Only representatives, advisors, and observers from both civilizations were permitted. When the Dominion's delegates arrived, they did not carry themselves like rulers. Their movements were slow, respectful. They wore symbols that showed they were there to repair what had been broken. The meeting started with a long silence. No one rushed to speak. Every person in the room understood the weight of the moment. When the Dominion's main representative finally stood, their voice was steady but humble. They spoke about the mistake their faction had made, how the extremists had acted without the knowledge of the wider ruling council. They explained how the assassination had sparked internal conflict, and how many inside the Dominion had been horrified by the act. They offered not just apologies, but a commitment to change. The representative admitted that nothing could undo what had been done, but they could ensure nothing like it ever happened again. The Earth delegation listened carefully. They did not show anger. They also did not show softness. They asked questions calmly, one after another, making sure every detail was clear. They wanted truth, not words meant only to calm the situation. At the end of the first day, the Earth delegation stated their conditions: a full record of the extremist faction's actions, open investigations, reparations to Earth, and a revised treaty that protected all diplomats in the future. They also wanted a series of shared security measures so that no group human or alien could push both sides into conflict again. The Dominion representatives accepted these conditions without argument. They seemed relieved, almost grateful, as if they were thankful that Earth had not chosen to cut ties completely. The next days were filled with long discussions, detail after detail, line after line. Nothing was rushed. Everything was carefully shaped. Both sides wanted the agreement to stand strong for generations. While the talks continued, news spread across both civilizations. People on Earth, who had once demanded harsh retribution, now started to soften as they watched the peaceful progress. Dominion citizens who had lived in fear of Earth's retaliation began to feel safe again. Across the stars, something unexpected happened, a slow rebuilding of trust. Not complete trust, not the kind that erases everything, but the first steps of it. In the final days of the talks, the revised treaty was completed. It was longer than the original, filled with protections, shared responsibilities, and cooperative programs. One of the most important parts was the creation of a joint peace council, humans and Dominion citizens working side by side to prevent misunderstandings before they grew into problems. Another key addition was the establishment of a memorial project, one that honored the ambassador, not with anger or bitterness, but with hope. It would stand on neutral ground, a reminder of how one man's life became the turning point that guided entire civilizations toward a better future. When the treaty was finally signed, there was no applause. No one felt that kind of emotion. Instead, both sides felt something deeper, a gentle feeling of relief, a sense that the universe had stepped away from the edge. The Dominion slowly began stabilizing. Earth's fleet gradually returned home. Life across the planets resumed its familiar rhythm, though nothing was quite the same. People had changed. Leaders had changed. Even the way humanity viewed its place in the galaxy had changed. In the weeks that followed, the memorial was completed. It was simple and peaceful, with curved walls made of pale stone, representing both civilizations joining together. At the center stood a statue of the ambassador, not carved as a hero or warrior, but simply as he had been, a calm figure, hands open, ready to speak and listen. Every visitor, human or Dominion, walked away with a sense of quiet reflection. Back on Earth, the ambassador's family received messages from across the galaxy. They were thanked, honored, and supported. People from the Dominion sent words of sympathy and gratitude, saying they would work to ensure his legacy was one of unity, not conflict. His family found comfort in the story of how his final mission, though tragic, had sparked a new age of cooperation. The Unified Council continued to oversee early rebuilding efforts. They knew their work had only begun. Peace was not a moment, it was a journey, one that would require patience and care. But they were ready. Humanity had proven something powerful during this crisis. They had shown that they could defend themselves when pushed, but also show restraint when given a chance for peace. They had shown that strength was not about how hard they struck, but how firmly they stood for what they believed in. As months passed, the Joint Peace Council began its operations. Teams of humans and Dominion citizens worked side by side, learning about each other's communication styles, customs, and beliefs. They laughed over small misunderstandings, celebrated small achievements, and slowly turned former enemies into partners. The ambassador's legacy guided them, reminding them what could happen when communication failed, and what could happen when communication succeeded. Sometime later, the first joint cultural exchange program began. Students traveled between Earth and Dominion worlds, sharing stories, learning languages, and experiencing new ways of life. Families hosted each other, breaking old stereotypes and replacing them with real friendships. Over time, fear and suspicion faded, replaced by a quiet confidence that both civilizations were capable of something better. Even the fleets changed. Instead of preparing for conflict, joint exercises were created to protect trade routes, study distant star systems, and respond to natural space events. The sight of human and Dominion ships traveling together slowly became normal. It no longer felt strange. It felt right. One evening, many months after the treaty, a gathering was held at the memorial. People from both civilizations came together in soft lights, speaking in calm voices, reflecting on how far they had come. A child asked her parent why the ambassador was so important. The parent explained gently that sometimes it takes one person's courage and sacrifice to show others a better way. The child looked at the statue, then at the people around her, different faces, different cultures, but standing together. She nodded, as if understanding something about the universe that even adults sometimes struggle to see. In that moment, the stars above felt peaceful, as if watching over everyone. The crisis that once threatened to divide the galaxy ended by bringing two civilizations closer than they had ever been. And though the ambassador was gone, his voice still echoed through every agreement made, every handshake shared, every moment of trust rebuilt. His mission had not ended with his life. It had only just begun.